What's going on, everybody? Jared Sandler here. Welcome to the Just a Sec conversation. Getting ready for episode 45 with Katie Engleson. Just want to thank you for tuning in. Welcome back for those of you who have tuned into past episodes. Just a reminder, would really appreciate if you'd consider subscribing to the channel. You can check out all 45 released episodes if you do, or even if you don't, you still can check those out, and I'd love for you to do so. I would also love for you to share this interview with your family, with your friends, like, comment, all of that stuff would be much appreciated. Katie Engleson's a friend of mine. I've gotten to know her broadcasting with her here in the Metroplex. We have done some Frisco Rough Riders games together, and then obviously have crossed paths otherwise. She's super talented, super driven. I was so impressed by the diligence and how thorough she was the first time I worked with her. And you'll hear a part of this conversation is dealing with some of the challenges of broadcasting that people maybe don't see or hear about often. It's, Katie and I deal with some of the similar challenges, and, I really enjoyed talking to her about that. Plus, her interesting life before broadcasting and a super unique skill that I still am fascinated by. So without further ado, here you go, episode 45 of the Just a Sec conversation with my friend, super talented sports broadcaster, Katie Engleson. All right, Katie, so the first question I always like to ask, open-ended, go in whatever direction with it that you'd like, but when you think back to your childhood, what was it like? What were you like? And what really stands out to you about Katie Engleson growing up?
Yeah, sure. So I'm from Parkland, Florida. If you're not familiar with that area, it's about 30 miles north of Fort Lauderdale, about an hour north of Miami. It's honestly closer to Boca Raton, if you're familiar with that area. But I came from a family that loved sports. I grew up playing sports, played soccer for 8 years, played volleyball as well, and then was a competitive baton twirler and dancer. So a lot of my childhood was spent going to games or traveling the country, going to baton twirling and dance competitions. And my sister did it too, so it was kind of a family affair for us. And then in high school, I went to St. Thomas Aquinas, which is a huge powerhouse when it comes to sports and athletics. It's like a college football and NFL talent factory, essentially. Michael Irvin is one of the, our notable alumni. The Bosa brothers went there as well. So that for me was a great opportunity. Grew up loving football. That kind of added this fuel to my passion. And then went to the University of Alabama for college. But as a child, I was pretty outgoing. And then there came a point where I was honestly pretty shy. But sports and baton twirling and dance kind of provided this outlet for me to be kind of a different person. I was really competitive. But more so competitive with myself. I just wanted to be really good at whatever I did. So that's kind of a little bit about my childhood.
All right, so one of the first things that jumped out to me when we met was when you told me about the baton twirling, because I know how, one would maybe get into soccer or volleyball or, dance, but how did you get into baton twirling? What pushed you in that direction, and what was it about baton twirling that I guess you connected with or fell in love with?
Yeah, so my mom was actually a baton twirler. So that's kind of how we learned about it. My sister and I, my mom had her old batons laying around our house in our garage. And so we would just learn to twirl. And then we found a competition team in Delray Beach, which was 30 minutes from us. So every day during the week, we'd be traveling to Delray for 3-hour practices, come back home, do our homework. So it was kind of crazy. But I love baton since I was a young kid. And I don't know, I love dance too, but baton, you can incorporate dance and gymnastics. Honestly, that's a really good question. I don't have the answer to why I enjoy twirling a stick, essentially. But, there's just something different about it. It's challenging. And it was just such a huge part of who I was as a kid. And I think if my mom wasn't a baton twirler, I probably wouldn't have any idea as to what baton twirling was. But in South Florida, it was pretty big. Our competition team had 100 people on it. So there were a lot of people that were interested in baton twirling, but it's still, I mean, when I tell people that I was a baton twirler, people are like, oh, they either know what it is or they have absolutely no idea what it is. So yeah, I don't know. It's definitely interesting, but did that from the age of 6 until I was 22 because I tried out for the University of Alabama Crimsonettes when I was a junior in high school, and that's a big reason as to why I went to Alabama, and did that for 4 years while I was there. So, yeah, it worked out pretty well. But I loved it, and it provided me a lot of really cool and special opportunities, especially when I was in college at Alabama.
Yeah, and I want to definitely get to your time there because I imagine as a sports fan going to Alabama when you went to Alabama was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. But before we move on from the baton twirling, and I find it so fascinating just because I know nothing about it. I know nothing about just the activity beyond seeing it or what goes into it and the environment. Like I never would have known that Florida is a competitive area for that. I'm curious. So you said you would go to practice for 3 hours, and I see and other people see baton twirlers perform in front of 100,000 people at a football game, and it's like unbelievable what they do. I mean, some people can't even throw a baseball up 20 feet in the air and catch it, let alone a baton that's twirling from however high it goes. What do you do other than like the act of actually tossing it up and practicing catching it? Like what goes into a practice? How do you actually get better at doing it? Or is it just simply doing it over and over and over? I guess I'm just curious, like what is the training like for a baton twirler?
Sure. It's essentially, I mean, just repetition. You start off with like these beginner type moves. And then as you get better and better, you learn more stuff that's more advanced. So for instance, you'll be doing maybe to start off a thumb toss, which is just tossing it into the air, no tricks underneath it, and catch it. That's like one of the very basic things. But then as you get better, maybe you'll do one turn underneath it, and then you'll keep continuing to get better and better. And then maybe you'll do 2 turns and then 3 turns and then 4 turns and then so on until you reach that elite advanced level. But it is very unique and interesting. And we were on a competition team, and then we also competed with individual events. So there would be like a solo, which is 1 baton, or you could do a 2 baton solo or a 3 baton solo even. And then there was duets, and I did one with my sister, and we performed at the International Cup together. So there's really so much that goes into it. And dance is very crucial, and gymnastics as well. And so that's why I had kind of a dance background. And at the University of Alabama, it was completely different. It was more like dance-based, to be completely honest. It was like we were dancing with a baton compared to like looking back at what I did with competition twirling. But yeah, if that makes sense. So you start off learning the basics, and then those basic moves evolve into something much more complex.
Okay, so Alabama.
Yes.
First of all, what's it like going to Alabama and going there during the time in which you went when Alabama was, if not the focal point of the college sports world, certainly on a short list of universities that stood out in that regard, and the fact that you were connected to the athletic department there at Alabama during that time?
Yeah, so going to Alabama was honestly the best decision I ever made. It was the best 4 years of my life, hands down. And being a Crimsonette, when I was there, my freshman year, we won a BCS national title. That was in Miami. And we beat Notre Dame that year. And that was really cool for me, getting to come back to, kind of my hometown of South Florida with my team. And then in between, we lost 2 Sugar Bowls, one of which was to Ohio State, and it was a college football playoff semifinal game. And then my senior year, we won a national title to Clemson. So that was really cool. But yeah, there were so many unique opportunities. My senior year, my team got to perform on Good Morning America in Phoenix after the championship game. We did not sleep that night, and we performed, and Kenyon Drake was the guest. He was one of our running backs. So he was, did an interview with Good Morning America at their team hotel, and we were in the background performing. So that was really cool. But yeah, there were just so many unique opportunities. College Game Day was there a ton. And then for me, being a sports broadcasting major, I loved it because it allowed me to be right there and kind of watch everything from a behind the scenes perspective. So the best 4 years of my life, hands down, and being a Crimsonette truly provided me some unique opportunities that I never would have gotten without being a baton twirler.
All right, so you mentioned sports broadcasting. What drew you to sports broadcasting? Why did you decide that was the path you wanted to pursue academically? And I guess at what point did you make that decision? Was that something growing up that you were like, hey, at some point this is what I want to do, or did it only connect in high school, or when did that kind of all manifest?
Yeah, so when I was 11 years old, I was on my school's morning announcements team at Eagle Ridge Elementary. And in the 5th grade, we would get to do different jobs. So one day someone was on air, someone maybe behind the camera, someone maybe giving weather updates. And that was something I got involved in. And I knew that I wanted to get involved with broadcast journalism from that point. I grew up watching the Today Show and SportsCenter with my family. And then it wasn't until college where I decided what route I wanted to go and that I wanted to get into sports. I love sports, played sports, came from a family that loved sports. So I was just around it. And I tried the whole news thing, but I'm so emotional and sensitive that covering like really gruesome events were not my style. And I learned that through an internship early on, luckily. But yeah, I loved it so much. And I love sharing stories. And that's kind of the big reason why I wanted to get into it. And then also that performing aspect, being a baton twirler and dancer, you're performing. And so that is really kind of how it came about. And it all started when I was 11 years old at Eagle Ridge Elementary.
We got to somehow get hold of some of those updates. Do you have any of them by chance?
I have. My mom actually has a video and she's been trying to find it, but there's this place that it's hard to explain. It's called Wannabe City. And when I was 11 or 12, my sister had her birthday party there, and it's a place where you get to try out different jobs. And they had like a mini CNN studio. And so I remember waiting in line, and I was reading news updates from this teleprompter they had, and they gave me the video. So she has that somewhere. But I don't have any from when I was at Eagle Ridge. Those would be interesting to see for sure.
Well, I hope one day that I'm on Twitter or Instagram and we get a flashback to your time at Wannabe City as an 11-year-old future CNN anchor. So, you know, I went, as you know, I went to USC, and while I didn't get to experience any national championships because the athletic department there is such a mess, and since Pete Carroll left, they've just been absolute garbage. But that's another story. They were still really good when I was there, and so we had game day come, and you know, like you, I knew I wanted to get into broadcasting while I was at USC, and through those experiences, because of the spotlight that was on USC, I got to meet some really cool people. You know, I got to meet, the first game I did sideline, part of the student radio, I met Erin Andrews, and she basically took me from sideline to sideline and took me under her wing. And I got to meet Chris Fowler when ESPN Game Day came. And there were these really cool experiences that I wouldn't have gotten had I gone to a different school. Not to say that other schools are not successful at producing broadcasters. They certainly are. But I'm curious, when you were at Alabama, with the spotlight that was on Alabama, you mentioned getting to do Good Morning America and Game Day. But did you get to meet anyone or develop any sort of connection with someone because of that spotlight that was influential at all as you continue to pursue your career in broadcasting?
Yeah, so I was a part of this organization called ESPN Campus Connection, and they had them at various campuses across the country. But I made some really good contacts through that. And then whenever ESPN would be at Alabama, for instance, for National Signing Day or for their spring bus tour that they would do, they would have talent there. And then they would contact me and someone else, and we would go and act as runners. And so we would, get the coffee for talent or like random things. Michelle Steele was there one time, and she needed lip gloss. So we ran to CVS and grabbed her this lip gloss that she needed. But yeah, stuff like that. And I'll never forget, it was my sophomore year, and it was National Signing Day, and Tom Rinaldi was there. And I was there. They had me come just to watch him and shadow him and learn. And it was the coolest experience ever. He took me under his wing, and yeah, he was doing all these hits for SportsCenter, for their ESPNU Signing Day special. He probably had a hit every 20 minutes, not even kidding. And in between those hits, he was helping me prepare a little piece that I was going to do in front of the camera, shoot a stand-up that I would have for my reel. And it meant so much to me that he took the time to help me when he, this is such a monumental day in sports, and he had so much going on, but he took time to help me. And that's something that sticks out. So Tom Rinaldi, and he's just an incredible reporter, and just his storytelling. And obviously I love to tell stories. So to get to learn from him was so special. And then when Danny Cannell was at ESPN, I got to shadow him, which was really cool. Got to meet like David Pollock, Chris Fowler when he was still with Game Day, and then Reese Davis, of course, who was an Alabama alum. He would be there a lot. He spoke to my class a few times when Game Day was there. And something also really cool, Jen Hale, who works for the Pelicans as their sideline reporter, and with Fox Sports Southwest, not only do we have Fox Sports Southwest, but we have Fox Sports Oklahoma and Fox Sports New Orleans essentially run out of our office. And so she actually spoke to one of my classes my senior year. And now I do some stuff with our Pelicans Insider Show, and she's the host of. So that's really cool to kind of see it come full circle. That's really special. But yeah, there's so many great memories that I have from being at Alabama, and there were so many cool opportunities to learn from some of the best in our craft, in our field.
We are ESPN Campus Connection alums.
Oh, are you too?
Me too. I think I could be wrong. Maybe
Probably.
I just had no idea. I think that it started around the time I was at USC.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So how about that? We've spent plenty of time together, and I know a little bit about what you share, but that's something that I didn't know. So we got to get a national alum gathering of some sort. I don't even know. That probably doesn't even exist. But all right. So I'm curious, beyond those experiences, as you've progressed through your broadcasting journey, who are some of the people, in addition to the ones you mentioned, who really have stood out to you as significant influences?
Sure. Well, in college, I knew Laura Rutledge because when I was in high school, I competed at Miss Florida through the Miss America organization, and she was Miss Florida at the time. And so we developed a relationship. And when she was working for SEC Network, she would come to Alabama to cover various games and whatnot. And obviously during football games, I couldn't do much because I had my Crimsonette duties and responsibilities. But she was there covering a few gymnastics meets, and she let me shadow her. And that was really cool. And she's always been someone who I've really looked up to. And then one of my sports directors from when I was an intern at WVUA at the University of Alabama, which was one of the local television stations there. He was the assistant sports director at the time, and he has always been an incredible resource and has helped me in so many ways, especially when I got my start working in Waco as the weekend sports anchor and sports reporter during the week. So there's been so many, just a variety of people really that have helped me and have inspired me tremendously.
All right, so your journey has led you to DFW, and that's a major market. But as some people listening to this may or may not know, a lot of times you don't just all of a sudden snap your finger and you're in a major market. If you think back to your journey, first of all, what are some of the stops along the way? I know that you spent time in Texas prior to DFW, and what stood out to you? What are some of the experiences that were really significant, a part of your journey before even stepping foot in a major market like DFW?
Sure. So when I was in college getting ready to apply for jobs, I knew that the reality of the situation was that I was going to have to go to a really small market somewhere that I probably had no idea where it was or have never been there before. But that's just the reality of the job. But I was willing to move wherever and do whatever I had to do to pursue this dream that I had. And so I applied. I probably sent out like 100 job applications, if not more, got a lot of no's, got some yeses. And one of those was in Waco, Texas. And I was so fortunate because it is a top 100 market and it is in Texas. And so got my first job out of college working for the ABC affiliate in Waco as the weekend sports anchor and weekday sports reporter. And that was truly just an opportunity for me to learn and grow. And I knew that when it came to the trajectory of my career, I knew that I wanted to obviously be in a major market. So I used that time to really I was almost obsessed with my job because I wanted to get to that next step as fast as I could. And like I said, use that opportunity to really immerse myself in sports broadcasting. And it was a great opportunity for me to learn. And just being in Texas, a huge product of ours there was, high school football, as it is at Fox Sports Southwest. And so that was incredible. And it was definitely challenging because, I moved there. I didn't have a ton of friends. Luckily for me, I made some of my best friends that ended up working with me at the time. But, I acted as a one-man band. So I had, a camera. I was shooting everything. I was writing my own scripts. I was essentially producing my sportscast. And during football season, it was so, it was a lot. It was, going to 2 games on Friday night, shooting highlights, coming back, editing them, and then writing your scripts, and then looking over the entire rundown for the show that we had with my sports director. And then we would have to go and, be on air. So it was crazy, but it really makes me appreciate the job that I have now. And I learned so much from my time spent in local news, and I wouldn't trade that for the world. As tough as it was at times, it really was such an incredible learning experience.
So then you moved to DFW. You become a part of the Fox Sports Southwest family, and you've been here now, and certainly have established yourself in this market. But I'm curious, when you got that job, was it like an athlete getting, a call to the big leagues? Were you just like overcome with emotion? Was it just, this is another step in the journey? Like, what was that like? Because you're in a place, and certainly at a young age, that a lot of people dream to be, or where they dream to be, and maybe they don't get there. So when you, I guess, earned that accomplishment of getting this job, what was that like, and what was the process like in which you obtained the job, I guess?
Sure. Yeah, no, thinking about that phone call that I received, I have chills. But I was still in Waco, was in Waco for a little less than 2 years. And I was actually in Dallas in Frisco rather, covering Cowboys minicamp. And I remember I received a phone call, but kind of just to rewind things a bit, I was at this point in Waco where I was applying to other jobs. I was, my contract was up. I knew that I wanted to get to a larger market. And so I had a few interviews, one of which was in San Antonio. And so they offered me a position at one of the local affiliates there. And I did not sign anything yet. But a month prior, I met some people at Fox Sports Southwest just to meet them and, kind of say hello and learn a little bit about Fox Sports Southwest. And so didn't think anything would really ever come of that, but I used it kind of as a networking opportunity. And then I was offered the job in San Antonio. And then like 2 days later, I received a phone call from one of the coordinating producers asking me to be involved with one of the events that we have for high school football. And I had to tell them, I don't know if I could do this because I'm about to sign with the station in San Antonio, and that could be, a conflict of interest or whatnot. So was at Cowboys minicamp, and I had an agent at the time, and he was like, you know what, let's see if they'd be willing to, kind of create a position. And so he contacted them, and he called me on the way back. I was in the car, and he said, they want to hire you. And I really can't put into words what that moment was like, because that was a dream come true, to work for a regional sports network. At my age, I was 24 at the time. I'm so thankful for that opportunity. And San Antonio would have been a great market too, but to have this opportunity at Fox Sports Southwest, I was just over the moon and still am. So that was, a phone call that I'll never forget. A really, really cool moment in my life for sure.
Now, if you knew that you would be forced to work with me, would that have changed your decision, and would you have ended up in San Antonio instead?
Not at all, Jared. Not at all.
So one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation is because of our experiences working together. And one of the things that I admire about you is that, no matter the task, it seems like you approach it 110%. I think the first time we really worked together was doing Frisco Rough Riders baseball. The games were carried on Fox Sports Southwest, and really all it was for you was an opportunity to get some experience being the dugout reporter. But it's, for those unfamiliar with that role, I mean, you might speak 2 or 3 times a game, maybe more, but you would put in the work as if you were going to be talking for 3 hours. And I remember the first game we worked together, you showed up, and based on my past experiences with people in your role, I thought I was going to have to basically spend 30 minutes just providing some basic information. But you showed up with all sorts of information and ideas and stories and stuff like that. And I was, in the middle of trying to figure out how I wasn't going to screw up this broadcast. I was really impressed. And I guess I'm curious, where does that come from? How did you develop that? Because I think it's one thing to have a good work ethic. I think a lot of people have good work ethics, but I think it's another thing to develop an idea that, like, every opportunity you get is important and you're going to treat it as such. And that, to me, is something that sticks out about you.
Well, that's really kind of you to say. So thank you for telling me that. That really made my day. But I think for me, just from a young age, I don't want this to sound bad, but I was always afraid of failure. And I mean, failure is inevitable. You're going to fail at times. But for me, if I knew that I gave it my best and I gave it my all, then, it was kind of out of my control or out of my hands. So I try to be as over-prepared as possible, because you never know if there's going to be an opportunity in something, or something pops up. And I don't know, it's just this competitive drive. I'm really competitive with myself, as I mentioned. And so I want to be the best that I can absolutely be. And so I think it stems from playing sports and just being a kid, being really involved at school. I just want to do the best that I absolutely can and do things 110% at all times.
So, and I hope this doesn't embarrass you, because I'll before I share this, say that I am 110% the same way, but we would be sitting in the booth before the game, and, you'd be asking questions, is this okay? Is that okay? And then you do a hit, and, is that all right? And whatnot. And, and I'm the same way. Like it was funny because it was actually really helpful for me, because here you are, someone who has just skyrocketed through this tough industry, and you're sitting here like asking me, was this okay? Was this okay? And it just like, it was, I'm not the only one who's like that, because I would do the exact same thing if I did anything. Was that all right? Was that all right? I for me, that stems from 2 things. One, what you just said, maybe, a healthy mix of a fear of failure with a desire to be the best. I think those things sometimes go hand in hand. And then also for me, like I struggled with confidence, like, especially when I was doing something so new. I broadcast baseball now, and I've been doing it for however many years, and I've got a long ways to go, but I've got so much confidence that I at least belong, and I'm able to do that. I do something new, and that's a struggle. And I always admire people who they're able to just step into any situation, no matter the circumstances, and they act like they totally own it. And that's never been me. And I'm curious, is that something that you've had to deal with and overcome? Or what are the things in that regard that you've had to deal with, and how have you dealt with those challenges?
Sure. I mean, 100%. I think in this position, everyone is kind of searching for approval, especially as you're starting out. In Waco, it was tough for me. I made a lot of mistakes there, but it was an opportunity for me to make those mistakes. I wouldn't make them again, if that makes sense. And I think there's been times where my confidence has really been affected, but it's so hard. I mean, honestly, podcasts really help me. Books really help me to kind of get over that hump. But even just asking questions, it's okay to ask questions. It's not a sign of weakness by any means. And And so you are someone, like, for instance, when we were doing baseball together, you are someone who's done that so many times. And, I look up to you so much and your knowledge. And so I wanted to make sure that everything that I was asking or saying was going to come across okay, because I was never in that role. I never did sidelines or was the dugout reporter, so to speak, for a baseball team. So it was a totally new ball game. And so for me, I just think it's so important to ask questions, and it's okay to show a little bit of vulnerability. I think we're all like that in some ways. Some are better at hiding it than others. But, I don't know. I just think that is something that I have struggled with, but at the same time, just knowing who you are, knowing your abilities, and just being confident. And it's like a quiet confidence, I guess. But I think the biggest takeaway that I've learned is it's okay to ask questions, and it's not a sign of weakness.
Well, I'm curious if there was a moment, or if there's been a moment in your career that was so important, not because maybe you knocked the assignment out of the park, but because you just did it. Like for me, when I first moved back, it was 2014. Michigan State was playing in the Cotton Bowl, and I was asked, I don't know how my name was brought up, but I was basically asked to MC a battle of the bands at Clyde Warren Park. And for the life of me, I can't remember who Michigan State played, but and that was so intimidating because, I still kind of, like, I'll do it, and I realize, like, after the fact that, like, maybe I'm not horrible at it, but I still have a pretty healthy fear of public speaking, and this was going to put me on a pedestal that I had never been on before. There were, like, 10,000 people there, and here I am with a microphone having to MC a battle of the bands, and by the way, I know nothing about music or bands, and, like, for the days leading up, I was dreading it. And then it ended, and I was like, hey, that wasn't so bad. And I don't know if I was any good at it or not. Maybe I stunk. I don't know. But just the fact that I was able to do it was really important for me moving forward, because I overcame that. And I'm curious, has there been a moment or an assignment or something that has been important in that way for you?
Yeah, I last summer was the first year that I covered the Dallas Wings, which is the WNBA team in Dallas, obviously. And so that was a new role. I did a lot of sideline reporting with football, but not so much basketball. And the girl that was doing that job previously moved for a different job. So they asked if I wanted to do it, and I said, absolutely. And those games are really unique because, as a sideline reporter, I probably had about 10 plus hits a game, which is so much more than, maybe baseball or football. And so it was really grueling. And I would do an interview with an assistant after every quarter. At halftime, would do an interview with a player, star player of that half, and then the coach coming out of the halftime. And then if there's any special guests, we would interview them, of course. So it's like you just got to be on your toes. And so I think the first game that I ever did covering the Dallas Wings was kind of this moment where I was like, okay, you know what? I can do this. And it just kind of made me so much more excited for doing other games, because it was really challenging and it was really tough. Just the amount of hits, the amount of repetitions, and kind of not knowing what's going to happen when you're going to get in the game. And then, of course, if there's any special guests, like learning about them really quickly. Like if someone showed up that I really was not too familiar with, we had an R&B singer that came to a game, and I really had no idea about him, but apparently he was really popular. And so I had to interview him, but I wanted to sound, of course, I wanted to ask him questions that were meaningful. And so just kind of stuff like that. That was challenging at first, but honestly, that was such a huge turning point for my career personally, and just like my personal growth, because of the amount of repetitions and because of that uncertainty every game of, who's going to be there, different interviews that I would have and things like that. It's so much fun. And that's honestly, I'm just so ready for the WNBA season this year. Yeah, I think that was a huge part for me, just in terms of like my personal growth.
All right.
Okay,
that makes total sense. All right, last thing, Katie, and I think you could probably guess where I might go with this. There's no way we were going to have a conversation that this not be brought up, and this is the moment when I knew that I needed to be friends with Katie Engleson. We were sitting in the booth It probably was the first Frisco game we did together. And I don't know how it came up or about, but we got to the subject of Nickelback. And I don't know how this evolved, but Nickelback has become like the biggest whipping boy, so to speak, for everyone. Like they are a total joke musically, and I don't know why. I don't think their stuff is that bad, and it came up, and you were a huge Nickelback fan, and there's not even really a question here. I feel like we need to be Nickelback truthers that their stuff is not that bad.
Oh my God, this is so embarrassing. But I love Nickelback. I don't really know why. I think people love to hate them. I think deep down inside, there's so many people that actually really love Nickelback. They know the words to all their, hit songs, whatever, Rockstar, Photograph. But I don't know. I love them, and their music's good. It's catchy. I kind of have to be in the mood to listen to them, though. So, like, if I'm going on a run, or the college roommates would joke and be like, in college when I'd be getting ready, on game days, I'd be blasting Nickelback in the bathroom, and they'd be like, why is she listening to Nickelback? But I don't know. There's just something about their music that's really catchy, has a good beat, and I think people just love to hate them, but I personally love to love them, just like you, Jared.
Guilty as charged. I don't hate Nickelback, and I'm okay admitting that. I think their songs are catchy, and they definitely get stuck in my head when I hear them. I'm not saying they should win any Grammys, but I guess as far as a guilty pleasure, I don't absolutely hate when Nickelback comes on. And if Katie's on my side, if she's on my team, I'm okay admitting that. There you go, episode 45 with Katie Engleson. I really hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for tuning in. We're releasing 2 more episodes next week, so be on the lookout. Until then, stay safe, be healthy. We'll talk to you soon.